I'm starting to feel reckless. I'm going to just say some things. I'm going to blurt it out. You can't control your life. You can't control your kids. You can't control America. You can't control Obama. You can't control health care. You can't control this. You cannot control me at this point, because now I'm losing it. You have no power to do it. But this is what we do almost 99.5% of the day, is we determine our life. We make our plans. We set our schedule. Well, how else can you live? Well, we don't know, because that's all we know to do. Plan our day. Plan our mate. Well, I'm going to have 3 kids. I remember a woman in college who, she was student body president. It was a 22,000 student university, and she said she declared by a 2-year window what year she would marry. The man would have a 6-figure salary. She was going to be a lawyer. She wouldn't even date someone who was not already in the pipeline for the 6-year salary. And when she said these things, she had her life mapped out. Well, I'm thinking, well, this is not going to work out for you. And but the class jumped on her. They were so upset. They were so upset at her kind of cockiness that she could dare think that she could actually determine who's going to be in her life and on what kinds of grounds. They were horrified by the almost antiseptic, almost scientific, methodical, systematic, corporate accounting kind of way that she had laid down her life, and was like, this was defining how my life is going to be, and it will be this way. That's almost like a godlike complex, and they were just kind of horrified. I had to settle them down. I mean, if they hadn't jumped on her, I might have jumped on her. But you can't do it, and you already know you can't do it. And every day we prove to ourselves we don't do it. Well, how do we pay attention to that? And how do we learn anything from that? And what do you do when you don't control life? We're really not that practiced in not controlling our life. And then if our spiritual life is something separate from our life, we're really in trouble. Because then we got our life over here, and then, well, I got my spiritual life thing over here. I'm controlling that. I do this on certain kinds of ways. Now, we know we can even make fun of people that we see doing this in an amateurish way. But us that are pros, pros go to centering prayer. Pros go to daily mass. Pros have read all this. Pros know all this. Professional people that we are in controlling things. So we're constantly having to find some way to be renewed. It's being broken out of the routine in which we control our life, which means we're not contemplating. We're not, in my terms, we're not receiving that life. We're not open to it. And this is what's just burning through Merton. He has to be open to this. If it's not God, he doesn't want anything else but God. And if I'm making this up, I don't want any of this stuff. This would just be pure crap. Unless there's truth, unless there's a reality here. Somehow we do sense that. And so we're back to like Close Encounters of the Third Kind. How do you follow this? So that's the life of faith. You're looking for a light, you're not the light. You don't direct the light. It is shown to you, and you don't have very far to go. If we want to go into the deep, this is the interior of our life. It's the life of our life. We can't control that. What does Christ say? If you're looking for this, you'll find it. If you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. And if you're looking for it, are you really looking for it? Or are you looking for some version? 2015 Silent Life or something. If you would like to have this life, Christ said, well, ask. And if you get there, once you get to the ocean, and you get down to the bottom of the ocean and you face that door, knock on the door. But we won't knock on the door. We don't ask. We say, well, I know. Or we seek in all the wrong places. We know all that. We have our answers to our questions. Can we break through all of that? It's almost like a skit that we're involved in. It's almost like we're writing it up. And then sometimes we do a little tragic ending of that chapter, and we do a little comic reading here, and we interpret our life. Our very thinking is a kind of controlling mechanism that and it just makes us kind of unsettled to how do you give up all of that? How do you get through that? Now, it's a great question, and if you had a good speaker here, they probably could... No, if you had a good speaker, they're not going to be able to tell you. Nobody knows this. You can't know this. But remember what Jesus says when he says, look at that flower. I was bowled over yesterday when I came up through the walkway and saw those red geraniums. Now we have red geraniums in Memphis, but we only have them spring through fall. We don't have them in the winter months, and it's really my favorite flower. There's the boldness of that red and the darkness of that green leaf, the hardiness of the plant. I just find that plant, personally, I just find it very beautiful. So when I saw that, I was just ecstatic coming in. Well, it may not have been a red geranium that Christ was talking about when he said, look at the lilies of the field, but they don't toil or spin. They're not controlling anything. They're just, to Merton, he referred to those flowers in the field, they're just praising God, being who they are. For us as people, we're trying to be something. We're trying to do something. We're trying to get something, have something, make something out of ourselves. That's not what God has asked us to do or to be ourselves. Well, if I go be myself, I'm not all this, all this great. Well, that's our interpretation. We don't even know who we are. Only way we can know, at least our tradition tells us, is we have to actually shut up. And I hate to say this as a speaker, but it is the truth. And we have to go into silence. And that's because you hear something. You are given something. As long as we're running our mouths, as speakers do, nothing can get in. But when you close down, when you shut down, when you decide to go ahead and give up the shop and the show and all the work, something opens up, something shows it to you. This is what Merton was just so excited about. So he calls it here breaking out of a routine, and he calls it a liberation of the heart from the cares and preoccupations of one's daily business. These cares, we're so familiar with these, the burdens. This is why we pray every day. And we're trying to loosen ourselves of these things. We're trying to let God help us. As long as we're trying to help, we're almost like God, we want God in control. That's almost a thought to me that's like we're still wanting somebody's got to control something. Merton, I just don't think he had this sense that God was a controller. Or that we're to be in God and then we would we'd be controlled by the great controller. His sense of life and reality was not even about control. It was about life itself. But that can be kind of, you got to watch this. You got to test this out. You don't just certainly accept this kind of stuff. It's not nice talk. It's kind of hard. But this is kind of how Merton talked. Everything that I'm saying is just kind of, I've been reading Merton for years, and this is what it seems to me he's trying to say. Let me stop for a minute on this last point about the semi-coma and check the time, see how we're doing on time. What time do we how much further do we go to break? How much time do we have for some? 12:15. Okay, good. Give me a couple more minutes and then let's talk a little bit. A semi-coma. If you watch films these days, every film seems like is filled with zombies. There's zombies everywhere. And one of the reasons is, and film scholars have been looking at this, psychologists are looking at this, it's a concern about dehumanization. We are really literally worried what is happening in Europe, what is happening in this country, all of our social institutions, everything seems to be falling apart. We're moving around. It's like everything has exploded. You can't count on anything, but everybody's busy counting everything, but you can't count on anybody. You don't know what's going to happen. It seems like it would be fertile ground for faith, but it just kind of scares us to death because everything that's structured, nailed down, seems to be completely loose. And what can you count on? It is a golden moment for a contemplative, but it's a scary kind of thing. If something is happening to people and we're losing our humanity. For Merton, if you're losing your humanity, you're losing your connection to God. You're losing life. You're losing not the church, not the Bible, not conferences, but the actual life of your life is the spiritual life of God. If we lose touch with that, we start to lose our humanity. And so it looks like our world, if we just watch movies, if we just watch the zombie movies. There's one with Brad Pitt called World War Z. And he's a doctor, he's a healer. And he goes to work for the United Nations because somehow all over the world, you can watch this on Netflix or something if you get that, or rented one of those red box places. But all of humanity becomes zombies, and they just start running and attacking everybody. Just swarms. They look like ants. It's an amazing special effects kind of film. But you get toward the film, toward the end, I'm not going to give it away. But it has a kind of, they do it in a pseudo-Hollywood spiritual wisdom sense. It doesn't quite work. But they're kind of on to something that is something in us that we have lost contact with that allows us to lose our humanity and become a zombie. And so how are you going to be able to check that? And how do zombies go? Zombies, they're trying to kill anybody who's human, anybody who's alive, anybody who has any sensibility. And so I don't want to give this away, World War Z. But something about our sensibility, and Merton has already referred to this spiritual attentiveness as our sensibility to God's life in rhythm, in existence, in the universe, in this room, in each of us. This is what we're to pay attention to. And anything else distracts us from that. And it's just vital that we do. It's what makes us alive as human beings. And we're constantly in need of coming back alive because we're constantly being tempted to be deadened. And it's us that deadens ourselves by cutting ourselves off from God's life, by trying to control our soul, our mind, our heart, our life, our friends, our family, our kids, the country. If you ask any of us, put somebody in charge of health care. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We all know what to do, but nobody knows what to do. So we're kind of lost. Let me just end it with there. Let's see. Let's see if anybody wants to ask anything, think anything. I'm trying to drum up something, create a little problem in the room if I can. I'll kick a table if I have to in a second. Just to kind of, let's do not get comfortable with this. We're having to break through our comfort level. This is what Merton asks. It's required to go deep. If anybody have a thought or question or argue, I'll be glad to argue as well.
You had said, and it is golden, but then I thought about it, that when speaking, if you're speaking, nothing can get in. But I think everybody has experienced golden moments when out of your mouth comes a message not for the person you're speaking with, but it's almost meant for you. And it's striking to, it's like, it's literally a highlighted moment, and you're aware that Spirit is somehow speaking, and that's how you're receiving God. And it's quite a shock when you're realizing it's coming from yourself. Yeah,
well, coming through you, I think I understand. I think I understand what you're saying. I mean, it makes it completely sense to me, and it's and maybe I spoke a little errantly when I said that we don't receive anything when we're talking. It does limit things, but there's a way of talking, and this is something we can learn. This is something we can learn the more we practice contemplation, because if we're truly contemplative inside and out, from top to bottom, beginning to the end, our speaking is contemplative. It could be contemplative. And again, just in using my frame of reference, to me, then that kind of speaking would allow for a receiving of God's life. And so as you're speaking, if you're not fixated on your words or your point or the effects, but you're trying to open something up by getting these words out, you're hearing something. You may not even hear something, but you receive something. And we know this is just in general for humans communicating, that someone is talking, and we've experienced this. When you're talking to somebody, you check your words when you look at their face, and you look at their eyes, and if they're befuddled or if they're upset, you change your way you're talking. As soon as somebody misunderstands you, you know, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Let me say it like this. We're trying to always work with each other. We're kind of giving and receiving at the same time. It's so much at the same time, it's simultaneous. And that's a mysterious kind of wonder. But once you start to appreciate that, you can hear by talking. And if you talk to somebody and you can hear them when you're talking to them, that gives them that space. We were talking earlier about raising our kids. That gives them space to then say something to you, which means you can say something to me because now I can hear you. And my talking to you is not forcing and controlling something. I'm opening myself up by talking. I'm opening myself up to listening. It's almost like I'm preferring to listen. If I'm understanding this, if I'm in that kind of stream, and it allows someone who's been spoken to not only to hear something, but to voice something. And people who read Merton pick this up, because he's not writing to them, but it's like he's addressing them. And they're hearing something else, not just Merton. It's not Merton's words. It's what's coming through Merton. Whether we hear it or whether we read it or we see it, comes through and it goes out. Eckhart talked about this. Pseudo-Dionysius talked about this. It's like this rhythm of God's life just pulsating, going back and forth, in and out. Birth and rebirth and death and rebirth and on and on and on.